Yes, I do.
You do? Okay, perfect. And you guys can see like the slides, not the notes, right?
Right.
Perfect.
The
Okay.
slides, who knows?
So, Caroline,
Yes.
yeah, I think at 2 o'clock, I'll just introduce you, but I'll do a very simple one. So you can introduce yourself by, I think the bio that you gave us, talking
Okay.
about the double major and so on there.
Yeah,
Okay. All right.
sounds good.
Thank you. 是是 I think that people are slowly coming in. Okay, it's 2 o'clock now, but I think that people are slowly dropping in. So, Caroline, let's
Mhm.
chat a bit before that you started the
Sure.
formal presentation. How about that?
Sounds good.
Okay. I think you said that you have done some financial planning, is it? Uh,
So
yeah.
my work experience is on the financial planning and analysis, so like financial planning for companies. And then I've also done some volunteering work with a local organization called Women's Money Matters, and they run financial literacy classes for women and girls. So I've been a coach on and off through multiple programs that they've hosted for about the past 5 years. So that's been kind of one-on-one coaching. And I will also plug that here. That's a great volunteering opportunity. You don't need to be a certified CFP or CFA or anything like that. So if you're interested in volunteering with them, they have a mix of virtual and in-person programs. Feel free to reach out and ask any questions. They used to have an in-person office, but during COVID, they kind of went fully remote, but they are based in the Boston area.
So in your personal experience, have you seen any I'm trying to think about is there any impact that you think upon this financial literacy?
Yeah, I think what I noticed in the in-person programs is that like you really build a bond and a relationship with people. And I think that's, one of the most important things is that people have somebody to go to when something happens. So whether it's, financial fraud or they've gotten a big medical bill that they weren't expecting, that they have a resource to reach out to, and ask questions and have somebody to help them navigate that. I think that that is one of the most important aspects of financial literacy is like that community around it as well is, having the resources there to be able to ask questions and ask for help. Um, and I think too, what I've noticed is that, you know, there can be a lot of emotions around finance as well. People can go through financial abuse or have, traumatic things happen to them. And so I think having kind of a structured financial literacy course with a very like supportive environment can really help to build confidence. And I think that's another really important aspect, especially when it comes to, right, like asking for help or even just things like going to the bank and feeling comfortable opening up a bank account and getting access to some of these services. I think those are really like the key pieces there. Like in some ways, it's not even about, understanding how to budget. Those are very important foundational things, but I really think it's like you have the foundation and then you have the support system around it of being confident in your choices, knowing how to access services, and then having resources and people to go to when you need help.
I think that you're right that because there's no formal I think
Mm-mm.
probably in the high school they started introducing some of the financial literacy courses there, but I still see that a lack of that. I remember when I was still teaching, I
Mm.
asked my students, "Do you know what's your credit card charge for your interest?" Nobody knows, and I said, "Go find out." And then they come back and 22%,
Yep.
29%, 32. I said that's against the law. I said that in Massachusetts, I think usually it's only up to 22%. And then
Mm.
they check again, and it's not from Massachusetts. It's from
Mm.
Delaware. I
Yep.
think Delaware probably has no limit at all, so
Yeah.
it can go. And they don't know that's what they were charging. So,
Yeah, it's funny you say that. So a lot of states at this point, I think like 35 have requirements, some sort of financial education or literacy requirement for like high school graduation. And Massachusetts, just in the last like month or so, there was a hearing at the state house to pass a bill that would require Massachusetts schools to have a financial literacy education requirement for high school. I'm actually not sure if that passed, but I do know that this past year was the second year that that bill had been up for debate. So, yes, I completely agree with you. Like, there's no formal education. And unless you have a resource, right, like a teacher that says, you should go and look at this, or some sort of, formal program like Women's Money Matters, it's very difficult to learn these skills. And a lot of the time, you're learning when you most need the information, right? Like when you have a huge medical bill or you're late on your credit card, and then you realize how much your interest payment is. And I think, yeah, if we could get ahead of that so that people have that knowledge before they need it, I think that that
right,
would be good. Yeah.
right. Okay. I think probably yeah, let's start the whole session then.
Okay.
People are still normally we have 30 some accounts getting in, and some are actual from my family. So probably
Okay.
I'll say at least probably about 50, 60 uh, people are listening to yours.
Okay.
Okay. All right, let's get started. Um, I'm going to thank uh, Caroline Weeks for coming in to give us a talk about how to protect us, I guess, for whoever, especially when we are past the what do you call that? The senior age, the 65 years of age. And so we really have to make sure that we don't get the financial schemes because it's getting more and more ridiculous these days.
Mhm.
And I met Caroline, actually very interesting. I met Caroline at Newton Court, and it was because my daughter was actually sued by a credit card company for a fantasy card, and they actually keep asking her to pay from 300 something to all the way to 1,000 something. And then finally they take her to court. She had no idea what's going on. My younger one is an artist, really don't know how to control her account. And so I think it's really interesting that Caroline told me that I thought that you were PhD law student, but turns out that I was totally wrong. So you want to start introducing yourself to everybody and then start talking about your talk. Thank you. Thank you for coming in.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Yes, so I graduated my undergrad degree in 2019 from Seton Hall University, and I have a dual degree in mathematical finance and IT management. So after graduation, I worked in a variety of financial planning and analysis roles. So basically helping companies budget and plan and manage their finances. And then in 2023, I went back to school. So I'm currently a third year finance PhD student at Boston College. And my research interests are mainly on the household finance side. So broadly household finance. Specifically, I'm really interested in kind of the everyday ways that finance impacts individuals in their lives. And we talked a little bit about this in the beginning. But in addition to this, I'm really passionate about financial literacy. Like we talked about, these are really not skills that most people are taught formally. And I think these are skills that, right, no matter your profession, no matter your age, no matter your income, these are skills that are really important and are helpful regardless of any of those factors. So I've been volunteering for the past 5 years with a local organization called Women's Money Matters. They run financial literacy programs for women and girls. So I've been a one-on-one coach in their programs, helping women learn about finance, manage their finances, basically all the way from like budgeting to how to buy a car, how to negotiate on your debt. So I'm really excited to be with you all today and to talk about financial security. So we're going to talk about how to protect you and how to protect your money. And so let me just hop into my next slide. Okay, so here's a little bit of an overview of what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to define financial fraud. We're going to talk about who it's impacting, how people are experiencing financial fraud. We'll talk about some ways to identify and prevent fraud. And I think specifically preventing the fraud. So we'll talk about some actions that you can take. I think getting ahead of it, right, is the best option. So I think that those are hopefully going to be some helpful tips for you all to take to help protect yourself. And then we'll talk about what to do if you do experience fraud, how to report it, what steps you should be taking, and then we'll wrap up at the end. We'll go through some key takeaways, and then we'll hop into our Q&A session. So let's start with defining financial fraud. So when I say those words, you may think of some of these people. So in the top left corner, we have Bernie Madoff. He ran the largest known Ponzi scheme in history, which was estimated to be about $65 billion. So he was sentenced in 2009 to 150 years in prison. And he actually died fairly recently. He died in 2021 and he died in prison. And even though we're, 15 years after that, the recovery of the money that he defrauded people that process is still ongoing. In the top right, we have Sam Bankman-Fried. So he was basically charged with a variety of things, fraud, money laundering related to his cryptocurrency exchange, FTX. So you may have seen him in the news recently as well. and he is currently serving his, I think, 25-year prison sentence. And then the woman on the bottom, that is Elizabeth Holmes, and she was convicted of fraud related to a company she was running called Theranos, which some of you may be familiar with. That was a blood testing company, and basically she had told her investors that, they could do all these tests with just a single finger prick of blood instead of a whole vial, and it basically came out that she had lied about the accuracy of their technology. And so she is also currently serving a prison sentence and related to that fraud as well. So this may be the picture that you have in your head of financial fraud. But I don't think that this is going to be the way that most of us experience fraud. If we ever do, hopefully not, but if it happens, it's probably not going to be in this context where, millions of dollars have been invested, and something goes wrong that's a huge news story. So the way that I think most of us will probably experience fraud are through some of these, like, let's call them smaller types of fraud. So we'll start first with the definition of, like, what is financial fraud? How do these organizations define it? So the Office of the Comptroller of Currency, they have a definition, and they basically say that financial and investment fraud involves schemes that trick victims into investing their money based on false information and or promises. And so these scams often promise high returns with little or no risk, but what ends up happening is that victims lose their money anyway. So what they are promised, they are not delivered on. Um, and I think some of the smaller types of scams, let's call them, that most of us have either probably been exposed to, hopefully not experienced, but some of these include imposter scams. So, like, maybe you get an email from your boss saying, or you're the CEO of your company, if you're still working, that the CEO needs you to do a favor for him. Like, please go out and buy all these gift cards. Somebody pretending to be somebody that they're not, usually with some position or position of power. So maybe somebody's impersonating an IRS worker saying that you owe money on your taxes, you didn't pay your taxes, you need to pay now. So basically, there are scams, a whole group of scams relating to people pretending to be something that they're not, with the hope that you will not ask questions and that you will fall prey. There are also cryptocurrency scams. I've been hearing a lot about these romance scams. And basically, the way that these work is that, maybe you get a text from a wrong number and you text them back and say, like, that person isn't here. That's the wrong number. And they basically try to start a conversation out of that, and then develop a relationship. Obviously romantic in nature in this context. And then eventually, once that relationship has developed, they then ask you for money. And usually they are not who they say they are. Also, one of the other types is online shopping, which maybe some of us have experienced this one of maybe you go to order a rug online and it comes in and it's delivered and you open it and it's the size of a coaster. It's not actually a real size rug like it said in the description. And then there are also charity scams as well. I think a lot of people want to do good and they want to donate their money to great causes. But it's important to do some research and make sure that you know where your money is going and that it is a reputable organization. So these types of scams, I think, are what probably most of us have been seeing recently. And if we were to experience financial fraud, this is probably going to be one of the ways that we experience that. Okay, so who is actually being targeted? Who's experiencing this fraud? So a 2017 report from the Bureau of Justice Statistics, which they're a division of the Department of Justice, that report showed that about 3 million adults in 2017 were victims of financial fraud. So that was about like 1% of the population at the time. So maybe a small percentage of the population, but 3 million people is a lot of people. And interestingly enough, in that report, in the 2017 report, they found that a little over half of the people that reported financial fraud or experienced financial fraud were women, and slightly less than half of the people were men. So it seems like women are experiencing this slightly more than men. And then in a 2024 report from the FTC, I pulled the statistics because I thought this was pretty interesting. So this report showed that younger people reported losing more money to fraud than older people. So this one kind of stuck out in my head because this was not quite what I was expecting, which maybe some of you would say, well, we're older and wiser and we can identify these things better than you, which may be the case. Um, but what was kind of surprising to me about this was, so I'm in this younger demographic, and like basically since, the whole of my adult life, these scams have been, pretty prevalent, especially, the phone scams, the texting scams. So I would have hoped that because we've kind of grown into a world where this is common, that we would have had a greater sense of awareness to say like, no, I know that this happens. I didn't ask for this offer. I don't know who you are. Like, no, I'm not going to respond. So that was pretty surprising to me. But I think maybe the other factor that's at play here is that because we have grown up in a world where this is pretty common, that younger people may feel more comfortable reporting fraud when it happens, compared to the older generation and an older demographic. So there are lots of dynamics here at play, but it does seem like there are, people of every age and background are experiencing fraud. So none of us are immune to this. We all have to be aware of, these scams and what's going on, and we have to protect ourselves. So how much is actually being lost when people experience fraud? How much are they losing? So that same 2017 report from the Bureau of Justice Statistics, that report showed that on average, financial fraud victims lost in over $1,000, which is quite a lot of money, and that in total, this was over $3 billion, which is huge. And it does not seem like this trend is reversing. So in 2024, that number has only gone up. So consumers reported losing more than $12 billion to fraud. So already we're seeing quite a jump just from 2017 to 2024. And then even in 2024, it's a pretty large increase from 2023. And what I would say about this is that this is probably underreported, right? So like this is probably just the lower end of this estimate of the money that's being lost, in part because not everybody is reporting this. So I think this issue is probably even bigger than the data that we have. And I thought this was interesting that the like type of scam that had the highest reported loss were actually phone call scams. And these scams reported a median loss of $1,500, which again, like is a lot of money. And if I had to guess, I would say that the phone call scams have the higher loss because when you are talking with someone on the phone, they can be very convincing. It's a lot easier to just delete a text or delete an email, but if someone is on the phone with you insisting that, you didn't pay your taxes, you owe this money, you're going to be arrested, they're sending people to get you right now, or your grandchild needs help. I think that is like a very different emotional feeling and one that's a lot stronger than just receiving a text or an email from someone you don't know. So that's something to keep in mind. Maybe if you don't know the phone number, don't pick up the phone. So, how are people actually being targeted? So, this is a screenshot from a flyer that the FTC put out, and they found that the top frauds, so the number one way that people are being targeted is through imposter scams. So this would be something like we talked about with, the CEO of your company reaching out saying, like, I need you to do this favor for me. You've done such great work. Like, I know you can handle this. Or somebody pretending to be a friend or a family member in trouble and asking for help. The second top fraud is online shopping. So that would be like our rug scenario where maybe what's delivered is not what you ordered and not what you paid for and not what was described. And I feel like a lot of people have probably experienced this online shopping issue. And this may even happen on a reputable platform, right? Like it may happen when you order something through Amazon, right, which is a legitimate company, but there may be a fraudulent seller that is selling on a legitimate platform. So always look through reviews, always ask questions before you hit purchase. So the third one is business and job opportunities, which I've been receiving a lot of these, and I'll show you one in the next slide and we can walk through that example. The fourth one is investment. So that would be kind of in the vein of the Bernie Madoffs of the world, right? And it doesn't have to be a Bernie Madoff. It could be on a much smaller scale with just a kind of rogue investment broker or a financial planner or whatever may be, where they basically come to you and say like, hey, do you want to invest in this opportunity? Like I'm only, offering this to 10 people. Like you're one of the chosen ones. I have this really great strategy or opportunity, and there's no risk involved, and you'll get a 200% return. And that should always be a red flag. So that's something else to keep in mind. And then this last one, the internet services, this was something that I actually hadn't heard until I was going through some of the data on this. And this one is basically, it's pretty specific, but it's basically people that are pretending to be either your internet provider or your phone company, and they will call you and say, or send you an email or text or whatever, and say, oh, we have this great new promotion for you. You're eligible for this promotion. Do you want a reduction in your bill? We can take, like, let's say $50 off your bill or something like that. So that one's pretty specific, and that was something that I hadn't heard of before. So maybe if you're receiving unsolicited offers from a company that you do have an account with or a relationship with, call them. So if you receive an email or whatever, don't respond to it. You reach out to the company and say like, hey, I got this phone call, text, email, whatever it is. Is this promotion real? Is it ongoing? And then you can kind of verify it that way. And so this is an example that I got last week. This is a text that I received. And so this text basically says like, hi, this is Leslie. I work with this company. Your resume has been recommended to us. So they kind of like try to butter you up. We have this great job for you. There's free training. You only have to work 60 to 90 minutes per day. We'll pay you $250 to $500 per day, and you'll get paid vacation. And so I don't know Leslie. I did look up this company, this Kelly Services, and there was a website there that was an HR recruiting firm. So that's kind of interesting. There does seem to be a company with this name. But this seems too good to be true, right? Like only 60 to 90 minutes per day with $250 to $500. That's a pretty high hourly rate for that much work, especially given that the text says you're just modifying online job descriptions. And I actually looked up like what professions would fall into this hourly rate. And that would be things like very successful lawyers and surgeons that are earning this rate. So that's probably not going to be the hourly rate that we would get from modifying online job descriptions. So if you're receiving these kinds of texts and you're like, this seems too good to be true, it is. Do not respond to them. My protocol for this is to just delete it and report it as junk. And it can be tempting to be like, please leave me alone, take me off whatever list I'm on. But that can be an indication to them that they have reached a real person with that text, with an accurate phone number and a real person and someone that's willing to engage. And you may end up getting even more texts and offers after that. So just don't respond. And always kind of look at things with a critical eye and be a little doubtful. The other thing that I want to point out here is that because they included a name in this text, my phone automatically prompted me saying, oh, this must be Leslie. Here's Leslie's phone number. Do you want to add them as a contact? Which kind of legitimizes this text. It doesn't make it look as scammy when your phone's telling you, like, this is a real person, like, let's add them as a contact. And I've definitely had instances where maybe I've emailed with somebody and they have their phone number in their email signature, and maybe they reach out and they call me or they text me, and my phone will prompt me saying, like, oh, this is this person from, that emailed you. Do you want to add them as a contact? Which is legitimate. But in this case, it's asking you to add somebody that is probably not Leslie behind this text. So just be careful, be cautious, don't engage with it, just delete it, and try and have that kind of critical eye of asking, am I expecting this text? No. Do I know a Leslie? No. Does this seem too good to be true? Yes. Okay, then I'm just going to delete it and not engage. So let's move on to talking about identifying and preventing fraud. So we talked about some of the ways in that last slide, looking at the text message, of ways to kind of parse through these messages. Um, we'll also talk about some red flags to look for. So we've talked about some of them, but I'll go through this list again, and there are some additional ones in here. So red flags that you want to look out for. Unsolicited offers, whether it's unsolicited job offers, investment offers, especially ones that are promising a high reward with no risk. And that could be, somebody reaching out asking you to invest your money with this fund where you're going to have a 200 times return. But it could also be something like that text we were just looking at, where they're offering you a very high paying job for what seems like minimal work. And this is kind of like Econ 101. There is always a trade-off. So anybody that tries to convince you otherwise, red flag, red flag, red flag. The other thing that you want to keep an eye out for, especially if it's something around like investment offers or a financial planning advisor, is a lack of documentation. So the financial services industry is highly regulated. You have to be certified to, be a financial planner and work with people one-on-one to recommend investments to them. If you have a mutual fund or an index fund that you're running, there are certain disclosures and documentations that have to be filed with the SEC, and that you also have to provide your investors, whether or not they ask for it. Like, right, with my 401k, I get emails all the time regularly updating me with, like, here's an update on your fund, here's what's going on. They legally have to, provide that documentation and that information to you. So if you, are solicited for an investment opportunity, always ask for documentation. And if they can't provide that to you, that is another huge red flag. Just walk away. They legally have to provide that to you. So anybody that won't probably is not a legitimate registered broker, financial planner, whatever it is, or at least not one that you want to interact with. The other thing you want to look out for is, in these tactics, in these communications, there will be a sense of urgency, and they try to pressure you to act in the moment, to act fast, right? With that example we were talking about of somebody calling you saying they're from the IRS. That's a really scary thing, right? If you don't pay your taxes, you go to jail. And so somebody calling you saying you didn't pay your taxes, you need to pay them today. We're going to send people to come and arrest you. That can be really stressful. And that is one of their tactics. They will hope that you will panic in the moment and not ask questions, and that you will just comply. So always try and like take a step back. And especially if it's something that is like a legitimate organization, like, I don't know, the SEC, the IRS, just do a quick Google and say, like, will the IRS ever call me? And sometimes, like, the IRS may call you, but that's not going to be their first way of trying to communicate with you. And so, just doing a quick Google can help to level set. And a lot of these websites for these organizations, whether it's IRS, SEC, even company like banks, they will have information on their websites that says, we will never contact you in this type of manner. We will never ask you for XYZ type of information. So pay attention to those reminders and that information from your bank and your other financial institutions. just to kind of level set and to help you not panic in the moment. The other thing that they may ask for is unconventional payment requirements. So they might ask you to do a wire transfer. They might ask you to buy a bunch of gift cards and then scratch off the codes and send them pictures of the codes of the gift cards. They may ask you to pay with cryptocurrency. And the reason they're asking for these types of payment methods is that these are the payment methods that are difficult to get your money back. Right. So in the instance of gift cards, once they have those gift card codes, that's it. There's no refunding of that money, unfortunately. So always like that should be a red flag, especially if you're receiving like solicitation from a company that you have a relationship with, like let's say your internet provider. So we have Xfinity. So if Xfinity reaches out to me and they're like, hey, you didn't pay your bill this month. And I know that I have an automatic transfer set up and an auto pay set up. And they're saying that I need to, pay them in cryptocurrency. That should be another red flag that not only are they asking for an unconventional payment type, but they're asking for something that you have never, you've never sent money to them in that way before. Always stop and ask questions. And then a couple other things to keep in mind. So for financial advisors, you want to look for fee-only fiduciaries. And basically what this means is the fee-only part of this is basically how they make money. So fee-only advisors make money just off of what you pay them. So you may pay them like, let's say $100 a month for them to manage your money. That's how they make their profit. They aren't getting commission from the financial products that they're selling you. And the fiduciaries, that part goes along with what they will sell you. So fiduciaries are required to act in your best interest. So what this means is that, if you are in a place where, right, like especially in retirement, you probably don't want to be taking crazy risks with your money. So they will not recommend you to, or they cannot recommend you to invest in funds or put your money in funds that do not fit your risk profile. So basically, they have to act in your best interest. And the fee only advisors kind of go hand in hand with the fiduciaries, right? Because if you're fiduciary, you're supposed to act in their best interest. And if you're fee only, you're not making commission off of financial products that you're selling. So you're not incentivized in that fee only structure to sell products that maybe aren't appropriate for an individual based on their risk profile. So those are a couple other things to think about. And then the last one we'll talk about here is if you're unsure if a business is legitimate, you can always look at their Better Business Bureau rating. So you can go on and you can search for the Better Business Bureau website. You can type in the company. And this is basically like a consumer complaint platform. And so you can see the complaints that consumers have filed against certain companies. And one of the things you should look out for is not only are there a lot of complaints, but are the complaints being resolved, right? Like, let's say you order a pillow from Amazon and you ordered a red one, but a blue one shows up. And they never fix the issue. You file a Better Business Bureau complaint, and then eventually that complaint gets resolved and they send you the correct pillow. And so if they're not resolving complaints, that can be another flag that like something is going on there. Take your money elsewhere. Just avoid. The other section that I want to talk about here in identifying and preventing fraud are some kind of like general financial literacy skills. And maybe budgeting seems like a little bit out of left field when we're talking about financial fraud, but I think this is one of the best ways to prevent fraud and address it quickly when it does happen. And part of this is because if you're budgeting, you probably have a good sense of when money is coming out of your account, where it's going, right? Like you will probably have a good sense of like, okay, I'm paying National Grid for my utilities on the 1st of every month, and I'm paying my Wi-Fi on the 15th. So you kind of have a sense of the vendors that you will see show up in your credit card statement, in your bank statement. And it will also help you to address if you see weird charges or some sort of fraudulent charges in your credit card or your debit card, um, you will be able to identify those pretty easily if you're budgeting and looking at your finances regularly, because you'll have a sense of, this is the amount of money that I spend on XYZ, or like, I didn't go shopping at Walmart this month. Like, where did that charge come from? So there are lots of ways to budget, and budgeting is a very personal thing. So pick the way that works best for you. And I'll talk about some of my favorite methods here. And feel free to ask questions in the Q&A if you have any other questions about different budgeting methods. The first one I want to talk about is the 50-30-20 method. So this corresponds to this pie chart on the right. And the idea with this method is that you kind of have these big buckets of where your money is going. So half of your money should be going towards your needs. So that would be things like your mortgage payment, your rent payment, utilities, groceries, things like that. 30% is going towards your wants. So that may be eating out at your favorite restaurant or going to the movies or having a nice vacation. And then 20% would go in your savings. So saving for a rainy day. Maybe that's your emergency fund. Maybe that's a fun vacation, whatever it is. The second method is the envelope system. And this one may be a little trickier to implement now, given that so many payments are happening with credit cards and online, and cash payments are a little bit more difficult. But you can always modify this to make it work for you if you want to give this a go. And the idea with this system is that basically when you get paid or you get your Social Security check, you go to the bank or you go to the ATM and you withdraw that money in cash. And then you create different envelopes based on your certain budgeting categories. So you have one for maybe like eating out, one for your gas, one for your utilities. And then once that money is gone, once you've spent all your eating out money, like that's it for the rest of the month. So that's an option too, especially if you have like trouble overspending on credit cards. This could be something to think about because you're spending physical cash, so there's a little bit more friction in those transactions. And then the last one is zero-based budgeting. So this is a bit more granular. And basically this is every dollar that comes into your bank account is accounted for. So you budget down to the very last penny of every dollar that comes in. And this is something that I like to do. I like a very granular budget, but some people may prefer a more high level budget like the 50-30-20 rule. But there are lots of different options. There are also lots of apps out there that can help you budget. So find something that works for you, but just review your finances regularly and have a general sense of where your money is going so that if God forbid, something happens, your credit card information gets out there, and somebody starts spending on your credit card, you can identify that quickly and address it when it happens. The other thing I want to talk about here are payment methods. So credit cards generally have pretty strong fraud protection. And the reason for this is that when you spend money with a credit card, you are spending the bank's money, right? Like that is not your money. When you spend money with your debit card, that money automatically comes out of your bank account. That is your money that has left the account, that has gone out. It's not the bank's money. And so the credit card companies are more incentivized to protect and get back their money than they may be to get back your money. So keep that in mind when you are paying, and tapping to pay is the best. So this avoids any possibility of like skimmers, which is when like scammers may put a like little instrument over the card scanner. So when you put your chip in or your card in, it's skimming the information from your credit card off. So tapping to pay is best. Digital wallets are also great. So that would be something like Apple Pay. And Apple Pay, right? Like you can put your debit card in your Apple Pay, and that basically uses tokenization when you pay. So when you pay, your credit card number isn't linked to that transaction. It's like a unique identifier that's linked to the transaction that isn't your credit card. So that's something else to keep in mind. And debit cards do still have some fraud protection, but it's just probably going to be a longer, more painful process to get that money refunded than it would be for something like a credit card. Okay, the other aspect that I think is really, really important are your credit reports. So Every individual that has a credit history has the right to request one free copy from each of the three major credit bureaus every year. So the three major credit bureaus, right, are Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. And so this website, annualcreditreport.com, is a website that you can go to request those free credit reports. Um, and this is one of those things where be careful when you are searching for this website because everybody's entitled to one free report from each of the three bureaus every year. So you can pay to get your credit reports, and the services that make you pay to get your credit report, they may provide you your legitimate credit report, but you don't need to pay unless you're requesting additional reports on top of the three free that you are entitled to. And the websites that you have to pay for, those are the ones that pop up if you type in pulling a free credit report. The websites that you have to pay for pop up first. This annualcreditreport.com, you have to scroll down the page to get to it. So if you're trying to pull your credit report and it's asking you for payment information, you are on the wrong page. Go and check again. And my recommendation here is that you stagger your requests. So you pull one report from one credit bureau every 4 months. So like maybe in April, you pull from Equifax, in August, you pull from Experian, and then in December, you pull from TransUnion so that you can check on this every couple of months and have a good idea of if there are any changes. And you can monitor a bit more closely than just every year. And the information that's provided on your credit report are things like your addresses and your phone numbers, your credit accounts, including ones that have been closed, and collection items. So you want to check for addresses and phone numbers that are not yours, especially the addresses. That can be an indication of identity theft, right? Because they probably had to get your social security number, and you like they probably rented an apartment in your name with your number. Same with the credit accounts. If there are lines of credits, right, like credit cards that you did not open that are listed there, that can also be a huge red flag. And then same with the collection items. You want to make sure to check for things like missed payments. Maybe you did miss a payment and that's okay. But maybe there's a line of credit on there that was sent to collections. And like Cynthia was mentioning at the beginning, these companies, there's a whole industry that revolves around buying loans and credit cards that have defaulted and missed payments, and they will take you to court regardless of if it's yours or not, because there's very little checks there to ensure that they are actually filing charges against the correct person for the correct amount for the correct loan. And they will take you to court, and they will take you to small claims court, or they will take you to civil court if it's over the small claims limit. And that can have serious consequences. If they get a judgment against you, basically saying that you're at fault and you owe that money, they can garnish your wages, they can garnish your assets in your bank account. So you want to keep an eye out for these things, because if you see something on there that's not yours, you need to dispute it with the credit card company and take steps to address that as soon as you see it. So freezing your credit, this is one of the key things I want you to take away from this presentation. You can freeze your credit. And what this means is that creditors can't access your credit reports. So new accounts can't be approved, they can't be opened, even if they are legitimate. So I had this experience recently where I changed my phone provider this year, and my credit is frozen at each of the three credit bureaus. And what I didn't think about was that when I changed to a new phone provider, they were going to do a credit check on me, which, right, like wasn't really top of mind. I didn't think that my phone company would need a credit check. If I was opening like a loan or something, I would have anticipated that. And so basically, they tried to pull my credit, and my credit was frozen. And so they couldn't access any of that information, and they couldn't process my new account. So I had to unfreeze my credit, reapply, go through the process of opening the new line. Once I unfroze my credit, they could pull my credit report. And then my account was opened. And so this means that even if it's a legitimate attempt to open a new line of credit or open an account, you will not be able to do it. And what this also means is that if it's a fraudulent attempt to open credit, they will not be able to open credit in your name. Now, this won't apply necessarily to things like a checking account. It only applies to things that you have to access by getting or having your credit pulled. And just keep in mind that if you are applying for a car loan or a new apartment or a mortgage or any sort of other purchase, a new credit card, you'll have to unfreeze your credit a few days beforehand, so that you don't run into what I ran into of like, oh, I forgot that I had done that. I need to go and unfreeze that so I can switch my phone providers. The other thing that I want to mention here is that you can freeze credit for minors. So if any of you have grandchildren, this is a great idea to freeze credit for your minors, because what can happen is if some reason their social security number gets out and people start opening up lines of credit in their name with their social security number, you probably are not going to realize that until they turn 18 or they graduate college and they go to apply for that first credit card or car loan or whatever it is. And right, like their parents probably are not pulling their credit report every year, because why would you pull a credit report for your child? Like they're not, they don't have a credit card. So that can be a great way to not only protect yourself, but also to protect the minors in your family that probably don't have access to credit, but that they could be the victim of fraud regardless of if they have a credit card or not. So something to keep in mind there. A few other general ways to protect yourself before we move on to what you do if you experience fraud. So be careful what you share about yourself online. And I think this is especially important in the age of AI, where scammers can use AI to mimic somebody's voice. So if you have a video that, let's say a birthday video or something of you online, or it's you and a friend or you and your child in the video, scammers can use the audio from that video to mimic your voice or your friend's voice or your kid's voice. And then when they call you asking for help, you're like, well, this sounds like my sister. Of course I'm going to help her. So if you're sharing a lot online, just make sure that you have, privacy settings in place so that maybe things are only shared with your immediate circle. So just keep that in mind. Also, do not store your payment or your bank account details in your profiles on websites. What can happen is that even if, like, let's say you have your credit card information stored at Target and Target has a security breach, your credit card information, maybe your address, your name, like lots of identifying information can be leaked in that scenario, and you just want to minimize that. So just keep that in mind. Try not to store your credit card details, especially your bank account number, on websites. Just don't do it. Type it in every time. I know it's a pain, but I think it's worth it long term. The next thing is don't click on strange links in emails or text. And like we talked about before, even just sending a text back of please don't reach me, please don't contact me, I don't want to hear from you, that can be an indication to them that you're a real person who's willing to engage, and they may further pursue you with other tactics. The other thing is you can use two-factor authentication for logins, especially for your financial information. And so what this means is that, right, you have a password. So you have the numeric password to log into your account. But basically, before you can fully access, you put in your password, then let's say your bank will send you a text with another code. And so that is like you have your password and you have your phone code, and you have to have those two things to log into your account. And so two-factor authentication just makes it more difficult for people to hack your account, to access your account, to steal your information. So this is a great way to protect yourself. I know, again, it's a little bit of a pain. Like, it's much easier to just log in with one password, but having this extra step can really help to prevent a lot. And what I've noticed with my like financial institutions specifically is that when I receive a text with my like number code to log in, so the second part of my password essentially, they always include a piece in that text that says something like, we will never call you and ask you for this login number, like never share this with anybody. So pay attention to those reminders and that information from your bank, because those are indications that if you do receive a phone call and somebody says like you need to give me that number to get into your account, that is probably not your financial institution. In fact, it is not your financial institution because they have told you that they will never call you or contact you in any way and ask you for that information. So just keep those things in mind. Um, and part of what you can do to make your actual password safer, in addition to the two-factor authentication, is you can use a password manager. And basically, the way that these work is they auto-generate kind of like random number and letter passwords that are much safer than you typing in like your pet's name or your grandchild's name as your password. And then it's much easier to A, keep track of your passwords, and then B, to change them regularly, which would be the other thing I'd recommend. Have like every, 6 months or something, you go in and you change your passwords, or maybe it's once a year, you go in and change your passwords for things like your credit card, your bank account, your retirement account. So that's another option there as well to kind of strengthen the security on your account. Okay, so what should we do if we are in the unfortunate circumstance of experiencing fraud? Hopefully, this is not the case. But if you do experience fraud, and let's say you've given money to somebody, like that said that they were the IRS, or you saw a strange charge on your credit card statement that you know was not you, do not wait. This is the like most important thing here. As soon as you see the fraud or as soon as the money leaves your bank account, report it. Do not wait to report the fraud at all. And part of this is because, especially if it's something like for your debit card or your credit card, the longer you wait, the more difficult it's going to be to get that money back, especially for your debit card. There are like certain rules there where, if you report it within 2 days, you are like covered for a higher amount of money. If you report it, past the 2 days, then you are covered for a smaller amount, so you won't get as much money back. So just as soon as you see an issue, always attempt to report it or resolve it. If it's something like you saw something strange on your credit report, that's something that as soon as you see that, you should dispute the information with the credit reporting agency that you pulled the report from. So if you saw something, you pulled your Experian credit report and you saw something strange on there, you should reach out to Experian and go through their process to dispute it. I've never disputed something on my credit report or experienced that. So I don't know how difficult this process is, and what kind of information you need to provide or what they'll ask from you. But report it as soon as you see it. And these are some of the ways that you can report the financial fraud. So this list is from the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. So there are a variety of institutions and ways you can report fraud. So for investment fraud, you can file a report with the SEC. Right. This goes back to what we were talking about, where the financial services industry is highly regulated. The SEC wants to know if there is a financial advisor, an investment broker, that is defrauding people of money. They want to know. For cyber crimes, there is a division of the FBI called the Internet Crime Complaint Center. And interestingly enough, when I was looking up their webpage to see how you filed a complaint, on the webpage that they have where you file complaints, they have a little banner at the top that says, "We will never call you." So clearly, scammers are trying to not only impersonate, financial institutions, but also the people that are like regulating these scammers and trying to crack down on any fraud schemes that are taking place. So I had a little laugh about that was a little ironic. So always pay attention, always question, always ask. You can also notify your state securities regulator or your attorney general's office. So in Massachusetts, the state securities regulator falls under the Secretary of the Commonwealth, so that's Bill Galvin. And then our attorney general's office, so that's Andrea Campbell. They have pages on their websites where you can report issues that you have. And the Mass AG website is they have a pretty broad range of things that you can file a complaint for. So mostly it's consumer issues. So that could be things like, you ordered what you thought was a rug and it showed up and it was the size of a coaster, things like that. Car sales and financing, if there are predatory tactics being used. Things like debt collection, where, these companies are using predatory tactics, taking you to small claims court when it's not your debt. All sorts of things you can file complaints with the Attorney General's office. Also, notify your bank, your investment broker, whatever financial institution either the money was paid out from or where you saw the fraudulent charge. Report that to whatever institution it is. And part of this is because a lot of these, banks, the credit card companies, they now at this point, fraud is such a huge issue that they have specific divisions in these companies related to helping people avoid fraud, addressing it when it happens, helping people get their money back. And these companies want to know how people are experiencing fraud because it can help prevent it for other people moving forward. The other thing that I'll say here is you can also reach out to your representatives, so your local representatives and your state representatives, because most of these people, they have constituent services. And so if you're having a really hard time, let's say you reported the fraud, you're having a really hard time getting that money back, they may be able to provide a little push to the company to say you need to give this money back. What's the problem here? I don't know for sure what kind of, what level of help they would be able to provide, but I think it's important if they can provide help that you reach out and see, and they may be able to point you to different resources. And I think it's also important to notify legislatures and representatives so that they know what's happening, and that if there are things that can be, taken or addressed through legislation being passed or regulation, that's important that they know what's going on. So those are ways you can report financial fraud. And let's go back to our key takeaways. So I want to wrap up with these are the things that you should walk away from this presentation with. So financial fraud isn't always this huge multi-million or multi-billion-dollar scam, right? It may be somebody asking you for $20 or $100 or maybe $1,000. But it isn't always the Bernie Madoffs, the Elizabeth Holmes of the world, and maybe somebody hiding behind a text or a phone call. So just keep that in mind. Take steps to protect yourself. Budget. Have a sense of what's going on in your finances, how much money's coming in, how much money's going out. Check your credit reports. Freeze your credit. I think freezing your credit is really, really important. It's free. It doesn't take a lot of time. And this is one of those things that, you may not always realize when your information has been compromised until it's too late, until you see a fraudulent charge on your credit card or a line of credit that you didn't open on your credit report. And freezing your credit can help to prevent those things from happening. So that's a really important one. And lastly, if you experience fraud, report it. Report it to the institution where it happened, where the money, where the charge occurred, where the money came out from. Report it to the regulators, and share your experience with family and friends. I think that this is one of the best tools that we have, right? Where it's if you share your experience, that can sometimes prevent, a family member or a friend from experiencing that same fraud, because somebody may try to, do the same thing to them, and they'll say oh, Caroline told me that happened to her. I know that this is fake and this is fraud, and I should report this, and I'm not going to engage with it. So really talk about these things, share your experiences, because that will help not only protect your friends and family in the future. But hopefully, if you're all talking about this, they'll let you know if anything's happened to them, and it will help protect you as well. So those are the three key takeaways. So always ask questions. Keep an eye out that financial fraud isn't always this huge thing or this huge like newsworthy story where it's this huge scandal. Take steps to protect yourself, and if you experience it, report it. Okay, so that's all I have for my slides. We can go ahead and hop into the Q&A section. And also, if you have general questions that are like general finance things, maybe adjacent to financial fraud, I'm happy to help answer those as well. So yeah.
I think you are wonderful. And I also think that your PowerPoint, I guess we have to go back and revisit again because it's so much information. And I also saw that in the message, there are several questions. So I'm sure that there will be a lot of questions for you. So anybody?
I see, maybe I can see the couple in the chat, so maybe we can start with those. And then if anybody else has a question, then feel free to drop them in the chat or like raise your hand with the little raise your hand button, and then we can get to those. So the first question is from Tom, and he says, "What's your advice on auto payment method?" Um, this is a little tricky, right? I think like in general, the pros of auto pay outweigh the cons, right? Where it's like you don't forget to accidentally not pay your utility bill or your Wi-Fi bill or whatever it is. But maybe put your credit card as your auto pay, not your actual bank account information, right? Because like what can happen with your bank account is, especially if you have like overdraft protection on your account, where if you go over the limit on your checking account and your checking account gets drained, it might then start pulling from your savings account if you have multiple accounts at the same financial institution. So I think it's much easier, right, to get that money back from a credit card than from your debit card or your bank account. So I think auto pay, I'm not against auto pay. I think maybe just use your credit card instead of your like bank account information or your debit card information. And then just make sure that whatever card you're using, you're checking regularly to make sure that there are no strange charges there that you didn't purchase. Okay, the second question is from Claudia. And she says, only to the credible. Oh, yeah. So that's another great point, Claudia. So I think in reference to Tom's auto pay question is yes, only set up auto pay for like reputable companies that you trust and that you use. If you're buying something like one off from a random website that you've never purchased something from before, and maybe like it's a subscription or something. Yeah, maybe don't put your auto pay there either. I mean, the other option too with auto pay is you could use something like PayPal, which like that's kind of like the digital wallet where they tokenize your account and it's not actually your like direct card details that get shared when the transaction goes through, right? But then your PayPal account does have your either your bank account information or your credit card information, so that's not a one-stop problem solved there. So yeah, make sure it's a reputable company. Maybe use your credit card instead of your debit card or your bank account, and just keep an eye on that credit card. And maybe if you have multiple credit cards, just use one for your auto pay transactions, and maybe use the other one for everything else, just so that it's easier to see what's going through your credit card. So you know, like, okay, my Chase credit card is the one where I pay all my bills from. And so if anything else pops up there, like that's a red flag to me. Okay, so another question, any examples of AI generated financial fraud? Yes, so I think this is where it like becomes very important that you kind of limit what you share online. Because right, part of the problem is like if you have a video, they can mimic your voice. And one of my accounts actually, which I didn't even enroll in, they just like auto enrolled you. So when I called, I had a question, I had an issue, I called the company, I needed to talk to a support person. And, a lot of times when you call places, they'll say like there's a little automated kind of like messaging system first, where it's a robot, not a person, where they ask you like, what's your name? And like, what's your account number, whatever. And so some of those are using your voice to verify your account. And so that can be a problem, right? I mean, even outside of, sharing fun videos on Facebook of your vacation or whatever, if you're in a public facing role, where you're publicly speaking a lot and there are videos of you online, like in your work capacity, that can also be a problem because they can take your voice from that. So what I would say is if you can, don't opt into the voice verify, because if that's the only way that they're using that information, that they're verifying your account, or even if it's like that plus, let's say your date of birth or something, that can be very easy to get into your account. And then if they drain your account, like it's going to be really difficult to claw that money back. So yeah, just be careful of how you're logging into your account and what the ways are, especially if you're like calling for customer service, what ways they're using to verify your account. And then just be careful what you're sharing online as well. Okay, another question. Any particular cautions for retired people? I would say, like I worry about my grandma a lot, where I'm like, if somebody were to call my grandma and say like one of your grandkids is in trouble, they need help, like I do worry that she would, fall for that because she's a lovely person, she cares a lot about her grandkids, and she's not super online. And so like she may not be aware of how these scams are happening or how they're evolving, just because of the nature of how she spends her time. So I would say, talk with your friends, your family members. Um, the other thing you can do is like have a little buddy. So have a buddy that you go through, your financial accounts, like maybe every month or every quarter. You like sit down, you have a nice dinner together, and then you each go through your finances. And if you have any questions, things can pop up, you can address them together, and then you have kind of somebody that you're talking to regularly, even if it's not like a financial advisor, and you like talk about I got this weird text, have you been getting these too, kind of thing. I think just be very cautious there. Also, like be careful of who has access to your accounts, especially if you're using a financial advisor, um, or if you have maybe family members, whether it's siblings or children, also on your accounts that have access to that. Just be careful that the people that have access to your accounts that you trust. And I would also say have a plan in place. Ideally write like through a will, that if something happens to you, or like maybe it's a medical emergency and somebody needs access to your account, that there's a process and a defined plan in place there of who has access to your accounts, in what scenario do they have access to your accounts. And just keep an eye on that. Like I think this is the biggest thing, is like just regularly check your accounts, make sure there's nothing strange happening. And especially if other people have access to your accounts, like make sure they're not taking money out, like check for these things. Because I think, right, like that can happen as people get older and it becomes more difficult to like manage all these things, which it's hard enough to manage regardless of age. um, just make sure that you're like keeping an eye on it, and that the people that have access to your accounts you trust, and that there's a plan in place there. And I think too, like communicate that plan, like let people in your family know what the plan is. So like my aunt and my sister and I had a meeting earlier this year where she had gone through, she had made her will, she had basically said like, here's my medical power of attorney, here's the executor of my will, here are the accounts that I have, here's how to access these things, here's the lawyer, here's who can help you. So just really like talk about these things, keep an eye on them, just monitor them. Um, I think that's like the biggest thing. And then if something happens, make sure you talk about it with your friends, with your peers, with your family, so that people are aware of what to look out for. Okay, so another question here that says, how long can you freeze one's credit report? Great question. So you can freeze your credit report for like a certain period of time. So if you know, for example, that, in 3 months you're going to buy a car, you can go in right now, you can freeze your credit for the three months, and then when it's time for you to buy a car, you're good to go. You don't have to worry about unfreezing your credit. You won't run into any issues where they try to pull your credit and they can't get to it. You can also freeze your credit indefinitely, which is I would recommend that unless you know that there's some sort of reason why you would need your credit pulled in, the next 6 months or so, let's say. Um, because if it's always frozen, nobody can open a fraudulent line of credit in your name. I mean, you can't even open a line of credit in your name, even if it's you. Um, so you can do it however long. Just remember that if you are only freezing your credit for, like, let's say a month, then you're going to buy a car, that you go back in and refreeze your credit after, the period has passed where you have your car loan, you have the car, nobody needs to pull your credit anymore. So you can kind of like customize it to you, and also keep in mind that you have to go through each individual credit bureau. So you have to freeze it individually at each one. And then the same for unfreezing, right? Like you have to go through each one and unfreeze them like you do to freeze them. But yeah, that you can customize that. Just make sure that, if you do a shorter period, you go in afterwards and then freeze your credit again. Okay,
Well, I have a follow-up question for that.
sure.
So how long, when you freeze it, how long would it take to unfreeze it?
Great question. So I think when you unfreeze your credit, I think it's like a business day that they have to unfreeze it. What I experienced, like when I tried to change my phone provider, was that even though I had like gone in and unfrozen it, give it a couple days, it may take a little bit longer. And sometimes like it just takes a little bit longer for like the company that's trying to pull your credit report to be able to access it. It should be a fairly like short turnaround period, but I would say like a week before if you know you need your credit pulled, like a week before that, go in and unfreeze it just so that you have, a long enough time window that there shouldn't be any problems. Um, the other thing that I was just thinking about was, with your credit report, you can also sign up for, like, Credit Karma does this. I have this option through my credit card where they'll put my credit score on my credit card statement every month, which is like a soft pull. It's not a hard pull on your credit like it would be if you were going through your, like, pulling your one free report from each of the three major credit bureaus. And that's another way that you can kind of keep an eye on your credit, um, even if in the months that you're not pulling like a hard credit report from Experian, from TransUnion, from Equifax. So that's something else to keep in mind as well. And then, right, like if you see a big drop, like something weird is going on there, and like Credit Karma sends me emails, it says like every month, here's your credit score update, like no big changes, or like maybe there's a small change, like you spent slightly more on your credit card or slightly less or whatever it is. But that's another option as well. Okay. Any other questions?
Hmm. Yes, actually, I have a follow-up question to Tom Young's
Sure.
regarding auto pay.
Uh-huh.
I personally set up auto pay for my Newton City's property tax, water
Mm,
bill, and other things.
mm-hmm,
Also have set up auto payment for Blue Cross Blue Shield, and all these are um, kind of reputable companies and
mm-hmm,
government entity. But to my memory,
mm-hmm,
was never an option to put in, say, a credit card or whatever. They always
mm,
ask for your bank account. Is
mm.
this true? Because I set up this several years ago.
Yeah, so I think it depends on the institution, and that's a great point. So like when I changed my phone provider, there was an option to put in my credit card information for my auto pay, but they would only give me a discount on my auto pay if it was through my bank account. And right, like part of that is you are for sure paying, like that money is coming out of your bank account into Verizon's bank account, let's say. And right, like with a credit card, it's not your money that's coming out, it's the bank's money that's coming out until you pay your credit card bill. So just check with your financial institutions or whatever organization it is. If there's an option to put in your credit card, that's probably the better bet. But sometimes, to your point, right, like it isn't an option. You have to put in your bank account information. And what I would say there is make sure that your like overdraft protection is off there. Because I actually had this issue when I was renting my first apartment. Basically, what happened was the company had messed up and they had withdrawn the money from the wrong account, and it had basically like overdrafted my account, and then it had drained the checking account and then pulled money out of my savings as well to pay my rent because they took it out of the wrong account. And so if there's some sort of like fraudulent situation where like you have your bank account, like let's say to your point, like in your Blue Cross Blue Shield, there's a breach, those numbers all get leaked. If somebody's trying to fraudulently use your bank account information to pay for something, that will at least put like a hard stop on the amount that they can access, right? Like they would only be able to access the amount of money that's in your checking account, which I guess the second part to that is don't keep your savings in your checking account. Keep like enough to pay your monthly bills and like maybe a little bit of a buffer. And then everything outside of that goes into a savings account, and then make sure that like the savings account, that those like bank account numbers are not being shared anywhere, basically. So yeah, you may not have the option, which is a great point. But if you do, credit card is probably better there than at least your bank account information.
Well, I do have one criterion, that is for say like Eversource, the utility bills. I know that they will vary from month to month, so I would never set up auto pay because I don't know how much they're going to charge.
Yeah.
But for things that are, but for the amounts that are already fixed, for instance, the Blue Cross Blue Shields, the premium is for 1 year until the next year when they change. Then you should trust that you know they should be that I should be okay with that. Now for government agencies like City of Newton, those things, unless the government's website actually is hacked, then otherwise you should trust them.
Yeah, definitely. And just a side note on the utility bills, there are programs that you can enroll in through, like I've definitely seen one through National Grid. My assumption is that Eversource has the same kind of thing, where basically they put you in a program where they look at your prior bills and they basically bill you the same amount every month. So just throwing that out there, that's maybe an option too. Yeah, there are lots of different payment plans there. But yeah, it depends on the agency, right? Like I think most agencies make a good faith effort to protect the information that's there, right? Because it is a reputational risk if there is a breach. So I think most companies are incentivized to protect that, but it does happen. So you just have to be careful, and sometimes it does happen, and you just have to call your bank, let them know what happened, and they'll kind of give you the next steps there.
Are you familiar with this company called City System, which basically does all the billing and correction of bills for different local communities? And Newton happened to be one of the systems. That's why we have been able to use that.
No, I'm not familiar with that, but that is good to know. Thank you for sharing.
It's called City Systems.
City System. Okay, I'll look into that. Thank you. Okay, any other questions?
I just want to confirm that to freeze my credit, I have to do with all three companies.
Yeah.
each one of them?
Yeah, so you have to freeze your credit at each of the credit reporting agencies, and you'll have to do it separately. So you'll have to freeze it at Experian, you'll have to freeze it at Equifax, and you'll have to freeze it at TransUnion, and then the reverse also applies. So if you need to unfreeze it, you'll have to go to each of the three bureaus and unfreeze it there.
Okay, so there's no place I can freeze for all three. No.
No, unfortunately there's no like one-stop
Okay.
platform where you just click one button and it freezes all of them. You have to do it separately, but it is a pretty like quick and easy process to go through and freeze it and unfreeze it. And you can do it either online, and I think you can also call and they will like help you freeze your credit over the phone as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Well, I do.
Yeah, thank you
I
very
think that-
much.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that a lot of I have a lot of bills that now that they just go online and they
Mhm.
don't send the statements to me
Yeah.
every month now.
Mhm.
So for me, it's kind of difficult for me to trace what's going
Yeah.
on because I just put the auto payment there.
Mhm.
So I wish there's some sort of maybe you can think about this one, some sort of program that can resolve this issue that has a mechanism that it will be safe, and then you can follow up, and then like every month there's a balance of this what's been spent here,
Yeah.
and so on there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I think a lot of companies at this point have like auto-enrolled people in e-billing, right? Which is what you're talking about, where they don't actually send you like a physical statement. But I do think you can go in and request statements if you want them. Like I think you can opt out of the e-billing and have them send you paper statements, whether that's from like your bank account, your credit card account. In terms of like managing the volume, there are a lot of budgeting apps, and like some of them you can link to your financial institutions, which it can be good, right? Because it does what you're talking about, where they can like kind of compile everything. But that also creates another issue of like if that budgeting app gets, hacked, then it's like all of your financial information that's out there. Um, I mean, yeah, like you could also print your statements out at the end of every month if that's helpful. If like that's what you like, having a physical copy, you could have a list of like create a checklist of like, okay, these are the accounts that I want to go through at the end of the month, and I'll go through and I'll print the statements and then I'll go through them like that. I know that the
Yeah,
Boston,
well, normally that's how I do it. I look at the bill, I
yeah,
look at the statement, and I write the checks and so on there. But
yeah,
then I find out actually for my two daughters, they don't have checks. They don't get checks at all. So they have to do online payment.
yes, yes. Like I think I've paid with a check once or twice.
They don't even issue checks to them.
No, no, you don't. Like I had a landlord who we paid our rent through Venmo, and like that was what he wanted. So that's the way we paid our rent. Do you think, right, like some of this is a generational thing, which I have seen some things about mail fraud, where people prey on basically they take your mail and they can see that there's a check in it, and obviously, right, like your bank account information, your name, your address, those are all in that checks, and then they not only have your information, they can then cash the check. So if you can like use it, you could use a different payment method, or if you like hand deliver the checks, that's something else to keep in mind. Like I know money orders, you can those are like tracked. So if that gets stolen somehow, you can get a refund through that. But yeah, I think, you know, like my grandma still writes us checks for Christmas. I think part of it is a generational preference, and there's nothing inherently wrong with paying with checks, but just keep in mind that, you know, if you're putting them in the mail, that can be a risk, especially if somebody gets a hold of. I saw something about there's a community Facebook page for Brighton and Alston, which is where I'm located. And somebody was saying that somebody was complaining that like they keep mailing letters and they won't get delivered. And somebody was saying that the mailbox key, so the mailboxes that are out on the street where if you have a letter, you go and you put it in the box and you mail it, and the mailman comes and he picks up everything from that box. That the key that opens that box had been stolen and replicated. So then somebody had the key to just go in there and take all the mail out. So, I mean, there's no foolproof way or like fully 100% secure way to make a payment, right? Like there's always some chance that your information can be compromised, or like that it's not a legitimate business and then they steal your information. So you just gotta like do the best that with what you can, and then find a system that works for you. Like if checks work for you, that's great. But like just keep an eye out for your bank account, you know. I think this just goes back to, you know, regularly check and make sure that it's what you expect to see there and there's nothing weird going on. Whether that's, you know, credit card charges, whether it's addresses that have popped up that you haven't lived at. And I think that, you know, at the end of the day, that's the best we can do, is just keep an eye out for ourselves, keep an eye out for our friends, for our family, for our neighbors, and try and keep an eye on it as best you can.
Now, is pay through Zelle a good way or safe way to do it? Zelle.
Pay through what?
Zelle.
Zelle.
Zelle. Yes, I believe Zelle is like pretty secure, but that's my understanding. I think the one I only tried to use Zelle once. My landlord like tried to switch the way we were paying our rent to Zelle. And what I ran into with that issue was that my financial institution had a cap on the amount of money that I could send through Zelle. So I think there are like institution specific rules in place that will vary bank by bank. But I do think like Zelle seems to be pretty reputable. Like my bank account, like I can pay money through Zelle through my bank account. But I don't know the ins and outs of how that works. And I think the other thing that I will say there, along with payments, like if you're sending money to somebody through like PayPal or Venmo, is just make sure you're sending it to the right person and that you have the right information there, so that the money you're sending goes to the right person. Because especially with something like Venmo, once you've sent that money and that money leaves your bank account, like, and if you've accidentally sent it to the wrong person, like really the only course of action you have there is to hope that the person that you sent it to that wasn't the intended recipient is nice and sends it back. So that would be my only kind of caution there, is just make sure you have the correct information before you send the money, whatever platform it is, whether it's Zelle, Venmo, PayPal, anything like that.
I do have experience with those, and I think that some have their limitations. For example, I think that I actually ran into that these days, is that for some people, Zelle actually set the limit, so they can only do so much per day. So I mean that creates a problem.
Yeah.
But then for PayPal, I think sometimes that you go through PayPal and they'll wait for 3 days before you get the money.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about Venmo, but I think those are the issues that.
Yeah. And
And then one more thing,
yeah.
that also happened to me, that I actually tried to send a bank check through post office. And it took more than half a month, they still didn't receive it. So I had to go back to the bank and cancel the check.
Yeah.
and then we have to find other ways to do it. The post office is very unreliable these days.
Yeah, I know that the postal system has had a lot of issues. If you are sending like checks or something through the mail, like one thing you can do that will maybe, I don't think it will speed it up, but it will at least help you be able to track and verify where that money is you can, I'm trying to think what it's called. I think it's called like certified mail, where basically you pay and when you mail it, basically there's like a tracking number, and then part of what you're paying for is not only for them to deliver it, but for them to get a signature and verify that they have delivered it to the correct person. So that's something else to think about. And then
But there's a problem with that. Most people, they are not home when the mailman come.
right. But if you have the tracking information and you know who it's going to, you can give them a heads up, right? Like it's not a perfect system. But you will at least be
At least
certain
you
that
have a
like,
way to track it.
yeah, and that if it's delivered to the right person, and that if for whatever reason it's not, like you paid for that service and then the post office should reimburse you. So that's something to think about. And then like for the post office when you're mailing things, right? Like I was just talking about how like somebody has a key to the on the street mailboxes,
Yes.
mail it from a USPS location. Like go in store, even if it's like you're just going in, you have your stamps, you have whatever. If you're just going in to drop it off at the physical post office rather than an on-street mailbox if it's for something like either important documents that need to be delivered or a check or a money order or whatever it is. I think that's probably the best option there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, is there any more questions? I also want to thank George, Dr. Zhou, because he was the one that sent out all the notice there and so on. But
Yes.
this time we didn't get yours in time, so I think that a lot of people didn't get the notice in time. I'm sure that this is very, very useful, and also I want to thank Yauwu. Yauwu is also Dr. Tang, I think, for technical support.
Yes, that is always crucial. Yes,
嗯
thank you,
我
everybody.
Oh,
他
there's
他这是
more
很好，
question.
是完全不需要 support 的，is wholly
Speak English.
professional。
Speak English.
谢谢。
But yeah, thank you so much for having me. Thank you all for organizing. Cynthia, feel free to share my email with everybody if you have follow-up questions.
Yeah, if you can send out your contact information.
Yeah.
For anybody that I'm sure that we will post the YouTube for the video, and we can refer other people to go through that. And there are actually several parts for me that I need to go back and take a look more, because I think you never know, and it's really getting more and more. When you are talking about that, younger people actually get fraud percentage more than the older people. But I tell you, I'm pretty sure that the amount to be scammed must be a lot more for the older people than the younger people there. And
yeah, I think that's a great point, right? Like if you're retired, I think a lot of people, you probably have more assets than a 22-year-old. So there's more to steal there essentially. So you really have to be careful. But it can happen to anybody. So if it happens to you, don't feel bad. Just report it, take the steps that you can to mitigate that. But yeah, keep an eye out for yourself, keep an eye out for others. Everybody has to be vigilant at this point.
yeah, one time I saw a stat, I don't know how credible, but they were talking about that average amount to be scammed for the senior people is like $18,000.
That's crazy. And sometimes like depending on the situation, if you can't get that money back, that can be devastating.
Well, the scam hit, I think what I was talking is not just from the bank or the monetary.
Yeah.
I think some are just for the dating agencies or
Yeah.
older people probably are not looking for jobs, but other needs. So
Yes.
they're willing to spend more money to get it.
That is a very good point. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
If there's no more questions, I really want to thank you. And please send your contact information so that we can send it out.
Yes, definitely. I will send you an email after this. Thank you so much for having me. It was lovely to spend the afternoon with you all. And I hope to see you again soon.
Okay. All right. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Mm.
Bye-bye.